Professor Gunaratne, please stay with us. We have another development coming out of the United States to discuss. In a tragic turn of events, 2 people were shot near the iconic Stonewall Inn in Manhattan's Greenwich Village late on Sunday night. The shooting occurred just as the city's Pride celebrations were winding down. One victim who was shot in the head remains in critical condition, while a second victim who was shot in the leg is in stable condition. The shooting took place steps from the historic site, a central symbol of the LGBTQ+ rights movement. The New York City's Mayor, Eric Adams, expressed his sorrow, stating that the violence cast a shadow on what should have been a moment of celebration for the community. Police have yet to identify a suspect, and it remains unclear if the shooting is connected to the Pride March that took place earlier in the day. Authorities are continuing their investigation while the community processes this devastating incident. As the city reflects on the unfortunate events, many are calling for increased safety and solidarity to protect the LGBTQ+ community during such significant moments of celebration. We will continue to follow this developing story and bring you all the updates. But once again, we are joined by Rohan Gunaratne, international affairs expert, to discuss this in further detail. Rohan, 2 tragic events in one day when it comes to the use of guns in the United States. How do you expect the national community to respond to this? The U.S. government, obviously, the Trump administration is very pro arms. We've seen other shootings in other countries result in legislative change. However, the US is a complete anomaly in that regard, in the fact that these are a regular occurrence in the United States. Can I just get your immediate reaction to this incident, Professor Gunaratne?
The Manhattan incident took place immediately after the New York City Pride March. And this is an iconic event that mobilized the LGBTQ community. So what we have seen is that this incident is related to that march. And what is key is for the United States to regulate once again the ability for anyone to go and purchase a firearm. So if there's no regulation, such incidents will be frequent, and these incidents will constantly repeat, crippling the security of the United States. So US government must address it. There's no other country where anyone can buy firearms so easily as in the United States.
Professor Gunaratne, obviously we know the different states have different regulations when it comes to where you can carry guns. Is it concealed or not? Who can buy guns? They have different background check strategies. But given the current political climate especially, do we see any real change occurring here in regards to the gun laws in the United States? We've obviously seen legislative changes when it has come to, for example, Christchurch a few years ago in New Zealand. Guns were taken away like that. Obviously, the United States is a completely different story. What are your thoughts on the current political climate? And you can see how these incidents will possibly have a wider implication for people in the United States in regards to guns.
President Trump is unlikely to have any restrictions on the sale of weapons, but very much like what happened in New Zealand, the case you mentioned, the Christchurch shooting on 15th of March 2019, where New Zealand took very decisive measures to control the sale of weapons. It is very likely if there is an attack, another devastating attack in the United States, the US will be compelled to do so. But at this point, I do not think it will happen because the Trump regime, the Trump government favors the access to firearms to the civilian population.
And what are your thoughts about the access that people can that people have to guns in the United States? She said sometimes you need a mental health check sometimes there is little regulation whatsoever. Do you think that these measures need to be heightened nationwide? Do you think this is something that needs to be brought into the federal government in regard to rules? Do you think that these state rules should be abolished, and do you think that there should be a more blanket term when it comes to these gun laws?
Because of the shootings, especially in schools, we have seen greater awareness today in the United States. But that awareness and understanding is not yet sufficient for the United States federal government or the state governments to make such changes to control the sale of weapons. Certainly there are some restrictions against categories of weapons and also to screen the mental health of people. But most recently we have seen so many right-wing groups arming themselves, going and training in the mountains, in the villages, in the jungles, and even openly in the use of these firearms and the rise in strength of the right-wing groups. So this will be a challenge that even the Trump administration and future administrations will have to deal with in the coming years.
Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on the programme. We now move on to our next story, where a major UN